Today we are going to be learning about a new tool that we can use with our acrylic paints called modeling paste. Modeling paste is called a medium. It's an additive that we can put into our paint. And if you look at the back of the container, which is a little hard to see if we don't zoom in, modeling paste is an opaque paste for 3D effects. You mix it with color and build it in thin layers. Overpaint, sand, or carve when dry. So we are going to be using modeling paste in two different ways today. The first one being using it as our background and adding texture to a painting. And the second one being mixing it directly into the paint to see the difference of the mixtures. When we're talking about paint, we're thinking about viscosity or movement of the liquid. So paste is a lot thicker than some of the paint that we are using. To start with, you are going to need a couple of supplies. You're going to want 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 palette knives. You'll need a brush of your choice. I like to go with a nice flat brush. A paper towel or 2. A bucket for water. Don't need to be half full or more. You'll need your palette paper or a palette to use. You can use one of our styrofoam plates or the plastic palettes if you don't want to use palette paper. You'll need your modeling paste. And you have been working on drawings of fruit. So whatever fruit you are drawing, you should have one drawing of it that has been completely unpainted. I'm going to show you 2 different ways. So if you want, in your sketchbook, you should be experimenting with the medium to figure out what you prefer. You get to choose if you want to use it as a ground or as a full additive to your paint colors. All right, let's get started. I'm going to use this drawing to establish a background with my modeling paste. So I don't think there's any foil on this bad boy. You can just squeeze it onto your palette paper. It's gonna look a lot like glue. Make sure it's closed when you're done with it. You can take your palette knife, and we've worked a little bit with palette knives, but now you're actually going to draw with your palette knife. So on top of your pencil drawing, you are going to fill your palette knife with your modeling paste. It's a lot like grout, which you put between tiles, or even a little bit like cement. And the thing you need to know about modeling paste is the more you have, the thicker your application will be. So if I'm looking at my lemon picture, I think I want more raised information on the rind of the lemon. So I'm just going to butter this up. Don't be shy. Get it really on top of where you want to paint. Using it as a background layer is going to give you texture underneath, whereas mixing it in with your color directly is going to give you a little bit more body in your paint than you already have. And since we're using a much heavier body paint, it's just going to get thicker and thicker. All right. So if I get up close, you can start to notice there's a ridge here. Wherever you want there to be a raised area in your painting, or something that sticks up towards the viewer, leave that edge so we can see it. So I want to have a nice edge on the outside rind of my lemon. Add more if you need it. Don't be shy. Depending on the look that you want, you might have a lot of this or just a little. So my goal is to get a nice ridge along the rind of the lemon. So depending on the angle that I apply it, will determine how much of it is raised. There we go. So it kind of looks like there's frosting on there. A little bit hard to see white on white, but if you turn, ooh, there you go. That's the angle we want. Now you can see all those ridges and textures that are added through the modeling paste. So you can play with that. And then what we would do is we would let this completely dry, which I know is hard and patience, but we would let this completely dry and then we could paint over the top of it. So I just wanted to show you one way that you can use it to get your background started. And this will be the final painting in our series. You're doing 3 paintings. This one is going to emphasize texture. So if I wanted to add maybe a little more around the inside of the lemon, again, I could just, don't have to swipe it on there. I can also dab it on, tapping my knife. However you apply it is the texture that you are going to get. So if I'm sloppy with it, it's going to look kind of drippy droppy. I don't want to put it in my background. I want to put it on my lemon. And that's one nice thing about this is you can move it around a lot while it's wet. Once it's dry, it's on there and it is dry. So make sure you commit to the look that you're getting when you're applying this tool. All right, so that is using it as a background layer. We're going to let that dry and we can come back to it later and see what it'll look like. For my second trick, just kidding. For my second drawing, I am going to use modeling paste directly mixed into my paint. So again, I'm going to put a goodly amount onto my palette. And I'm going to use a clean knife to grab out of my paint. I'm going to put it right next to my modeling paste. I don't like my knife to sit out. Hardens the paint onto the knife, so I let it sit in my water. And then I am going to become a master paint mixer, and I'm going to go back and forth with my knife gently to mixture consistency that I want. So now we're going to have yellow frosting. Just kidding. This is not frosting. Do not eat it. It is toxic. Bad. But notice how buttery and creamy that paint is. That is what you want to see. Not a lot of bubbles, not a lot of gaps, nice, clear, even coverage. And the fun thing about this tool is you can use your knife or your brush. So I will show you both. So looking at my lemon, again, I'm going to butter up my rind. Put a little bit on, you can move it around. If you put a lot on, you got a lot to move around, right? I'm going to butter up my lemon. That is the weirdest thing I've ever said. Thick application means thick lines and separations and texture. So if I want it more textured, I add more paste. More is more is more. There we go. So I'll hold that up so you can see the luscious, delicious flavor of our yellow frosting. And I'll also show you how to paint it on with a brush. So I can take my brush, add a little tiny bit of water just to wake up my bristles. Now I find that I prefer using a palette knife, but you might prefer using a brush. You'll only know what you like once you try it. When you have your brush, you have a lot more control than your knife. And I know that's important to many artists. I like to play with my mediums and figure out what I prefer. Same rules for application with a brush as with a knife. The more you have, the more texture you will have. And I find that the brush evens the texture out a little more. But if you are more random with your brush strokes, or do a pattern or a different movement, you will get a different amount of texture. So you can see a little bit of that wavy pattern from where I was putting my brush into my paint with my modeling paste. That is Liquitex Acrylic Modeling Paste. You should try it. You are going to need to use it on one of your 3 paintings of our fruit study. You can do it 2 different ways. You can use it as a grounding layer, and it's already starting to dry pretty quickly. We're going to wait for it to dry completely though, so we can play with it with some other techniques in the future. So this is option number 1. You can use it to create a texture layer on the very bottom of your drawing. Or you can mix it directly into your paint, get similar results, but have color immediately. All right. There you go, my artists. Give it a try. Learn something new. Make something cool.